Welcome to How to Cook That. I'm Ann Reardon, and today we're making this pretty dessert that has a chocolate glaze and a white chocolate spiral over the top. And inside it has chocolate mousse, a caramel creme brulee, salted caramel, and a layer of chocolate cake. And we'll make that cake first. For that you will need flour, cocoa powder, melted butter, egg yolks, one amount of sugar, egg whites, and another small amount of sugar. Pour the sugar into the egg whites and the larger amount of sugar into the yolks. Then you want to whip the whites together with that sugar until you get soft peaks. And I'll put all the recipe quantities on the howtocookthat.net website for you, and I'll link to that below. Then use the same beaters to whip up the egg yolks, and if you keep whipping them, they'll become pale and thick like this. Fold about a third of the whites into the yolks, and you can be quite rough with that, and then sift the flour and the cocoa powder over the top. Sifting just gets rid of any lumps and it adds air into the mixture. Fold that through, and we're trying to keep as much air in this as possible because there's no baking powder. We're just using the air that we're adding while we're mixing it, and that will expand when we bake. Add in the rest of the whites and continue to fold those through. Now tip a small amount of this mixture into a bowl and add the melted butter and mix that through thoroughly really well. Just adding it in like this will make it easier then to combine it with the rest of the mixture. Add it into the rest of it and incorporate it by just folding it gently through. Again, we don't want to whip this up because we don't want all the air out of it. We want to keep as much in as possible. And then once you're sure there's no more bits of dry flour or cocoa powder, pour that into your tray and spread it out thinly. We only just want a small layer of this cake in each of our desserts. Then bake that in a moderate oven. Once it's cooked, we need to make a syrup using water, sugar, and a little vanilla. Mix those together and heat that over the stove or in the microwave until the sugar is dissolved. Pour that over the cooked cake while it is still in the tray and just leave that to one side. To make the caramel brulee, you'll need sugar, egg yolks, milk, cream, a bit more sugar, and 2 sheets of gelatin and some water to put that in. So the first thing we're going to do is put the gelatin in the water and leave that to soak. Place a pan over high heat and sprinkle in some of your sugar. Now if you just keep an eye on that, you'll see the sugar will start to melt. As it does, sprinkle in more of your sugar over the top, and once you've added it all, give it a good stir to make sure you have a nice even brown caramel. Don't overcook it or it will burn and you'll have a pungent burnt sugar taste, which is not what you're after. Pour in the milk, being careful of the steam there. And the caramel will harden with the cold milk, but it's okay, just keep stirring as the milk heats up. That caramel will dissolve, giving that beautiful caramel flavour to our brulee. Add in the cream and continue to stir. Whip your egg yolks and the sugar together and then whisk in a little bit of your hot mixture. Whoa, just steamed up my camera lens there. Then add that back into the pan on the stovetop and heat this for just a minute until you start to see it cling to the base of the pan when you tilt it. Squeeze the extra water out of the gelatin and add that into the pan too. Now I will also put the amounts for powdered gelatin on the website as well in case you don't have the sheets. Stir that in and then tip it into a tray lined with foil to make it easy to get out later, and we want to put that in the freezer overnight. For our salted caramel, we need cream, sugar, butter, and sea salt. Melt the sugar in the pan, just like we did before, letting one layer melt and then putting more over the top and then stirring it when it's a nice brown. Then add in the salt, pour in the cream, and stir that until it's smooth and all that caramel has dissolved into the cream. Then add in the butter and stir it through. Now we want to continue to heat this to thicken it up, and to test if it's thick enough, you can drop some into some cold water in a glass, and if it goes thick like this, then that's about the consistency we want. Pour that into a heat-proof container and leave it to cool. This stuff tastes amazing. You might want to make a bowl just to eat that by the spoonful. Now for the rich mousse, you'll need chocolate, egg yolks, more eggs, water, sugar, and cream. Firstly, put the yolks and the eggs into the bowl of an electric mixer and beat it on high speed until they become fluffy and pale. Place the sugar and the water into a pan and heat it up. Add a candy thermometer and heat it until it becomes 244F or 118C. And then pour that into the eggs with the mixers running. Keep the mixers going until you can feel the side of the bowl and it feels cool. Whip the cream to soft peaks and then fold in your melted chocolate into the cream, and then add the egg mixture and fold them all together to make a rich, delicious chocolate mousse. Take your brulee out of the freezer and using a cookie cutter push down firmly to cut circles, and do the same with your cake so that we end up with little circles of both. Spread a circle of your cake with some of our yummy salted caramel, and then add on top of that a disc of frozen brulee and push it down slightly. In a hemisphere mold, add some of the mousse down the base of each one. Then add one of our circles brulee side down and push it into the mousse. Then neaten up the top using your spatula. Now you want to place those in the freezer to set firmly so they're ready for glazing. That shiny glaze that goes over the top is quite easy to make. All you need is some water, gelatin, cream, sugar, more water, cocoa powder and glucose syrup. Pour the gelatin into the water and stir that well, and then place it to one side. Put the sugar, water and the cream into a bowl and heat that either in the microwave or on the stovetop until the sugar is dissolved. Sift in your cocoa powder over the top to make sure there are no lumps, and then use a whisk to stir it in really well. Then add in your gelatin, and that will have absorbed all the water, so you can just stir it in and it will melt in the glaze. And this is what makes the glaze set as you pour it over the cold dessert. Then lastly, add in your glucose syrup, and this is what gives it that mirror shiny finish. And you want to let that glaze cool down until it's only slightly warm. If you pour it on your dessert when it's too hot, it will just melt a layer of the dessert and slide off. To make your chocolate spirals, you're going to need a cake turntable or a Lazy Susan and some baking paper on top of that. You just need to spin it and hold the bag steady, moving it out slightly as the paper spins. Then you can move your baking paper, and while that one is setting, you can make another one. Make sure you're using either compound chocolate for this or tempered chocolate. So if you're using real chocolate with cocoa butter in it, you have to temper it or this decoration won't set. And I have a whole video called Chocolate Secrets that explains how to temper chocolate. Take your frozen dessert out of the hemisphere mold and rest it on a small cookie cutter or something that lifts it up. Pour the glaze all over the top and let it slowly drip down. Now, because the dessert is frozen so it's cold, the gelatin sets on a thin layer, leaving that layer of glaze over the dessert. And it's called a mirror glaze because it's so shiny like a mirror. Hello! Wait until it stops dripping and then transfer that to a plate. Beautiful. Now add the chocolate spiral over the top and pop those in the fridge for about an hour for the centre to defrost before you serve them. Subscribe to How to Cook That for more cakes, chocolate and desserts. Click here for the recipe, here for last week's giant Butterfinger video, and here for my YouTube channel. Make it a great week, and I'll see you on Friday.